going back to Extinction Rebellion and Animal Rebellion and Republic and whatever it is. Everyone has a right to say, we live in a, thankfully.
Amid the chaos, the royal family has added fraud and nepotism to the mix, a deep plot with Camilla's handprint, and her ingenuity will leave you shocked. Forged documents and secret transfers dominate the narrative as Tom Parker Bowles, with the help of his mother, the Queen Consort, allegedly embezzles funds from the royal family into building projects. How complicit is Camilla in this exploit? How did King Charles unravel such a brilliant scheme? Join us as we discuss the King's brilliant discovery. The Whispers, inside Buckingham. Like every family, the British royal family has always had its highs and lows, and ghosts of old problems somewhat remain within the halls of Buckingham Palace, haunting the family. However, time continues to play its part, chiseling away memories of the past and sculpting new ones to keep the royal family as important as it needs to be in the minds of its citizens. But just as much as the family continues to build up their reputations, which have been smeared over the years by conspiracy theories and even by some of their actions, whispers have once again filled the cold walls of Buckingham Palace. As is tradition in the family, they have kept it quiet and found ways to patch their bleeding reputation. However, keeping secrets from the public is one thing, while protecting that secret from ever being revealed is a completely different ballgame. Talking about walls made of prolific ears, Buckingham Palace has always had its fair share of gossip, ranging from the Tiara Gate rumors to the alleged Princess Diana's letters. But this time, a recent discovery pervades the halls of Buckingham. Something completely different, dangerous, and borderline outrageous. While palace insiders have often spilled the tea on hidden secrets, such as the state of the king's health and the silent tension between the Princes William and Harry, which was reportedly fueled by their differing views on Meghan Markle, this new whisper on someone of high repute within the royal setup cooking the books might be the greatest of all. This time the plot thickens, as insiders report that Prince William, who is said to be his father's closest advisor, had spotted inconsistencies in the financial reports of the Crown's treasury. However, according to palace insiders, this recently discovered discrepancy had been going on for years behind the king's back. Palace sources reported that the prince was taken aback by what he saw. He could not believe that the crown was about to fall from neglecting the same principles that his father had often preached to him. King Charles, like every other kid who was raised within the confines of royalty, was trained to trust family and ensure transparency. They had enough wars on the outside already, and they always found ways to beat the conspiracy. However, an internal hemorrhage was a factor they could not beat. Charles taught the same principles to William. Transparency is the lifeblood of the royal family. Hence, should a member of the family veer from it, they risk the reputation of the crown bleeding from the inside out. But for some reason, someone was not paying attention, and now the blue skies seem to disappear for the royal family, as shame prepares to reign. But just how did the prince make this discovery? Blueprints of betrayal. In the Game of Thrones, betrayal is no foreign concept. While it is not an ideal part of the royal setup, it just cannot seem to go away. The royal family has always been surrounded by rumors of deep states plugged deeply into the skull of the royal skeleton and covered with bias and deception. However, for some reason, no one is ever able to really tell the wheat from the chaff as they troop the colors together and have their HRH title added somewhere on their names. But this time, King Charles has an older and more mature Prince William by his side. The prince, who was once a fire starter as a young man, seems to have finally grown and come into his own. Although his alleged treatment of his brother Harry, as recorded in his memoir, Spare, adds a bit of gray to his colorful palette, his recent discovery seems to have him back on the rise. and King Charles is a beneficiary of this improvement. Prince William, who had always taken up an interest in art history and geography, finally found a new way to put his skill to good use. Checking out the United Kingdom, figuring out more about the lay of the land, and just how much architecture had begun to reshape the history of the country. However, as he continued to revel in his recent environmental appreciation, he made a discovery that rattled his cages. Sources inside Kensington Palace reported that he found housing projects in the United Kingdom, which he did not believe were tied to the crown, until his personal assistant, Ian Patrick, allegedly made the connection between the housing projects and the crown. Prince William, who had always been privy to information about the crown's finances and had rarely discovered a financial discrepancy, now wanted a closer look since his assistant gave him a reason to believe that the crown, or at least its least shiny bit, was involved in a conspiracy, embezzling from the royal family and funding a money pit. According to sources in Kensington, the prince was certain that he needed something concrete to take to the king. He needed proof. He needed a name. So he rolled his sleeves and locked himself in his study at Kensington Palace, where he pored through stacks of private documents for several hours a week, finding clues and following the money. Sources close to Prince reported that he found traces of over 12 million British pounds missing in the books. At first, he had missed them because they had been attributed to some perfectly named project, only to find out that they did not exist. But these checks were allegedly signed by one person, the Queen Consort, Camilla. What next for the good old prince? Prince William's conundrum. Although unraveling the discrepancies in the books was a win and definitely put the prince in high spirits, finding out that it was closer to home than he imagined dampened his spirit and threw him off his high horse. The time had come to make a decision, and what seemed like an open and shut case of finding the money launderer and putting them to the sword had taken a whole new twist because of his history with Camilla. Speaking of history, Camilla's journey into the British royal setup came at a very expensive toll, the sad breakup between Princess Diana and Prince William. Their tale might be the most popular three-way love story in the British royal court. Camilla Shand was once married to Andrew Parker Bowles, a former brigadier in the British intelligence. He was an outright hero in Britain, hence he had the respect of the royal family. However, he competed for the love of his life with a remarkable opponent in Charles, who was but the heir to the British crown. However, Camilla did not mind Parker Bowles's status. Instead, she wormed her way into the royal family, allegedly being the one who drove the discord between Charles and Diana. She was stealthy, keeping herself away from the public and secretly playing her role behind the scenes and affecting the results everyone else could see. While her side of the story with King Charles seemed more like an inevitable love that had to conquer a Diana-sized roadblock, Diana's eventual demise brought theories of hatred and seemed like the curtain-full moment that secured her plans to completely control King Charles behind the scenes. Hence, there have been rumors of a silent feud going on in Buckingham Palace, a palace where secrets never stay hidden forever, as they seep out as gossip or opinion columns in a newspaper article. Rumor has it that both of Diana's kids, although at odds now, unitedly have an opinion that the Queen Consort, Camilla, deserves the blame for ripping their family apart and possibly playing a part in the demise of their mother. While the family photographs and the social event have only captured the smiles and little hugs, insiders suggest something deeper, an inside wound that refuses to heal and festers forever, with vengeance as its pulse. Whether these claims are true or not, all that the world needs to erupt is a well-cooked narrative with enough pointers that soothe the maybes and the ifs. The prince was wise to this, and he could tell that bringing his discovery forward might just once again awaken the narrative that he was still mad about the past and only trying to muddle up her name and her reputation. His conundrum was real. He was challenged by nothing but a living, breathing idea of a narrative that might undermine him. But did he ever find the courage to spill the beans? Prince William gets a nudge. As expected, the prince, who had been battling the dilemma within himself, tried to find the courage and tactic to tell his story without getting linked to his old beef with Camilla. Think about it. It has been 28 years. Could anyone really hold a grudge that long? Maybe he mostly couldn't. The citizens of the United Kingdom have been known to have long memories, especially with the death of the people's Princess Diana still weighing heavily on their hearts. She was more than a princess. She was a breath of fresh air in the monarchy. According to insiders, Kate Middleton, Prince William's wife, who had been watching her husband stew in their study at Kensington, could not take it anymore. She wanted a way to restore the light in his eyes and possibly help him find a way back to his old self. So, she played it simple and steady, speaking to him and hoping to get him to share his problem and possibly find a way to solve it. Sources close to the couple confirmed that the prince finally opened up to his wife, who advised him to throw caution to the wind and be the tattletale. Her rationale was basic, but it was effective. This isn't the streets and suburbs of Birmingham where the infamous Mandams keep some no-snitching bro code. This is a matter of the crown, the ceremonial jewel of the United Kingdom, and a throne coveted by anyone in the world. Hence, he had every right to sing like a canary if he found a discrepancy in the books. Immediately, Prince William's eyes shone brighter, his pulse quickened as he turned red with purpose, suddenly willing to let the king know that he dined with snakes, and his reign had been tampered with by those closest to him. Finally, the weight of the secret that rested so heavily on his shoulders had been lifted. Insiders in Kensington watched the prince as he paced around the study with Kate, standing right across him, watching him practice his words to the king. Kate was sitting like she conducted an orchestra, stopping him every time he hit the wrong note. His words had to be perfect, and he could not, for even a split second, get out of character. He needed to speak to her as though she were the king, and learn how certain words might trigger the wrong reaction or send the wrong message. Before dinner in Kensington, the prince had found his shine again, and he was finally ready to face the king and tell him tattered tales of betrayal that had swarmed his reign for much longer than he knew. But there was something else that ate at Prince William. Camilla is about 78 years old. Hence, there was no way that she did all the legwork on her own. She had to have had somebody else in the frame, who fleshed out her ideas. Someone she could trust. Perhaps family, maybe even a son. Who was this fellow perpetrator? A partner in crime. Money laundering and embezzlement are infamous for being two of the most difficult crimes to commit, especially for many years without getting caught. It requires a presence of mind, wits, and a bit of insanity to even attempt, as the consequences of being caught are extremely dire, especially when you are stealing from one of the biggest machineries of the state in the world. This time, Prince William dug deeper and found a name: Tom Parker Bowles. Tom is an extremely intelligent food writer and food critic revered all over the United Kingdom and around, hence, he isn't just some bloke who is thriving off nepotism. However, there was something about him that made most people uneasy. He was seldom in the news unless he had some mischief up his sleeve, or he was making his mark as a food critic. But while he was obviously deemed capable by most people who see him thrive in the food space, there are bits of news that everyone seems ought have forgotten about him. For some context, back in the years 1999, there were reports from reputable papers that he was a menace who got high on a controlled substance during the Cannes Festival. He, like his father, was raised a Catholic, but that was just about everything he had in common with his dad, and maybe that taunting smile. However, in most of his interviews, whenever he was quizzed about his parents and how it felt to be the son of the Queen Consort of England, he often replied with a smile and told stories of their intense connection. In fact, her influence cut so deeply into his life that it also carved a career path for him. He owned up to schooling at some of the most reputable colleges in the United Kingdom, including Eton College, Worcester College, and Oxford. But in spite of all that, he chose a career path that was inspired by his mother. According to Tom, Camilla Shand was amazing in the kitchen before she became a part of the House of Windsor, where she had 1,000,000 maids waiting on her and tending to her needs as required. He hailed her recipes and looked upon her for inspiration. Owing to his home-inspired meals with recipes that came right from his mother, his career got that bit of a boost in the food space. Owing to his relationship with his mother, it was not that hard for Prince William to establish who her partner was. It had to be Tom. After all, he is her only son from her former marriage, a marriage she left as she fell in love with a prince. Prince William pondered what her reasons were. Was it some sort of retribution to pay him back for leaving his father? Or was she just the greediest woman in the world who not only enjoyed taking his mother's place, but was also happy to steal from his father? How exactly will Prince William take the news of this alleged betrayal to the king? Prince William spills the beans. As the rumors circulated in Kensington and Buckingham Palace, murmurs had filled the halls from regular culprits, including palace maids, the kitchen staff, and mascots, discussing these topics and anticipating the moment of truth, when the palace possibly erupts when Camilla's alleged secrets are exposed to the king. The day had finally come, and Prince William walked up to his father not as his son, nor the child, looking for vendetta against the woman who took his mother's place. He approached him as a concerned working royal, who had the best interests of the crown and its citizens at heart. King Charles, a man in his 70s, with a wealth of experience in the most delicate matters of the crown, watched his now-grown son with pride, seeing him ready to unravel a scheme, albeit with no prior knowledge of where his fingers would be pointed. One glance at the king and the prince could tell that he had him right where he wanted him, dying to feed right out of his palm. Sources close to the meeting halls described Prince William's opening words to the king as strong enough to elevate the halls. He extolled the king to the high heavens, telling how good a job he had been doing since the demise of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, in 2022. Although the king still did not know what he was walking into, his reaction to Prince William's sudden praises seemed rather telling that he needed to brace himself for a bombshell. This realization immediately forced him to keep his guard up. What started as a proud father and son moment quickly spiraled into something a bit more standoffish, even before any real words were said. At this point, Prince William had a choice. He could simply walk away from the scene and decide against telling him about the paper trail that he found and where it led, or just spill the beans and risk a feud with his father. The air got thicker around them, and the atmosphere shifted. The prince looked lost as a lamb, but his wife's words of advice continued to chime like a church bell at the walls of his heart, and he just couldn't let it go. So he looked right into his father's expectant eyes, and he could tell that his son had made the choice to throw caution to the wind and tell it as it is. With his heart racing, he spoke to the king as high as his voice could go, and told him of his findings and how much the Queen Consort had been exploiting her seat in the royal setup. What followed was silence. Deep, heavy, question-laden silence. What did the king make of this news? A conflicted king. As expected, the news hit the septuagenarian so deeply that he allegedly shed a tear from one eye. It was almost proverbial. This was not a simple reaction. It was pain from deep down his heart to be hurt by someone he had given it all up for. It was a remembrance of how much scrutiny he had to face in the media for breaking Diana's heart just to spend his whole life with a woman who steals from him and the crown. And just for kicks, it was Diana's son, who caught her red-handed. To King Charles, karma did come, and it was served coldly and painfully. But even though the king could tell that she had been caught, he tried to poke the bear and see what happened. So he immediately told William he could not believe his words, claiming that he detected a hint of anger and pent-up frustration that had lasted 28 years. But to the king's surprise, William was not offended. He simply responded with more proof and tons of signed checks bearing the Queen Consort's signature. This time, the look in his eyes was defeat. There was no coming back from tons of signed checks that confirmed William's suspicions. So, together, the father and son duo came up with a game plan to destroy these housing projects and made sure the funds were no longer accessible. To Prince William, the problem was half solved. The real estate projects had been destroyed, and the infinite money loop had been closed. As expected, news of these actions was kept under wraps and within the halls of Buckingham. However, the prince believed that the problem needed to be completely uprooted. Sources close to the prince perceived that he proposed an arrest of Tom Parker Bowles. Although Tom has cleaned up his act since 1999, when he was arrested for getting high on a controlled substance, this new act of rebellion, allegedly empowered by his mother, the deep state lodged at the base of the crown, only meant one thing: no one completely changes. According to palace sources, the king and Prince William will continue to remain at odds over the next course of action, because they just can't agree on whether arresting Tom Parker and spilling his actions to the whole world was a good look for the crown. For some context, arresting Tom Parker Bowles would require an inquest into the crown itself, meaning that questions would be asked of the royal setup, and the Queen Consort would have no choice but to be convicted as a criminal who aided and abetted embezzlement and money laundering. The stakes are high as ever, but the onus remains on the king to make a decision. This time, duty meets nepotism, and King Charles has a choice to make. Only time will tell what he decides. Do you think the king takes the high road on Camilla and her son? Was Prince William's decision to rat Camilla out really without any form of vengeance? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.